Колеги, ми продовжуємо робочий день. Тема наступного прес-брифінгу.
Continue our working day. The topic of the next briefing is anniversary of liberating Slovyansk, investigation and dead ends. Oleksandra Romantsova, coordinator, Evhenia Zakrevska, lawyer, and Pavlo Yurov, the victim. Good afternoon. I will start. I'm the lawyer, the representative of those who suffered from criminal actions of Girkin Group that was working in Slovyansk. I will start and then we'll give the floor to the victim, then Sasha, and then Pavlo Dikani. On the 5th of July this year, it was the year after Slovyansk was liberated. As a lawyer, I consider this date to be the beginning of quite fruitful investigation, the investigation that had to be fruitful, and we could have expected to have some results. There's no secret that during April, July, being in Slovyansk, there were many crimes committed by Girkin and company. It was organized by a criminal group headed by the citizen of the Russian Federation, former special serviceman who before that was working in Crimea, ensuring annexation, and after that with a group of his friends that was growing because they were recruiting new people, he moved to Slovyansk. Then there they had three cellars where they were keeping the people, they were torturing them and killing. The activity of Girkin, became known after the murder of Rybak, Dyakovsky, Popravkin. That was the first episode, and unfortunately that's the only episode which is being investigated. How can we can state that during a year, despite many, I mean hundreds of people who were tortured in the cellars of Slovyansk, dozens of people who were murdered, not just Popravkin, Dyakovsky, Rybak, there were other murdered people. There are mass graves there. It became known to journalists that these were not just murders, but they were organizing like military tribunal. They were making death penalties, and then they were issuing orders and were executing the sentence. But there's only one criminal case being started on only one criminal episode. There are several dozens of criminal cases registered in different district departments of the Ministry of Interior, Security Service, and sometimes they are about the same episodes of the criminal activities of this criminal group, and they are not investigated. Many victims have no chance to use their rights of a victim. I'm not saying that they should be taken to responsibility. The civil cases to be submitted, filed The criminal case should be filed, and this will be a story of one typical victim, but that's quite typical story. That there's no understanding of a crime as a crime organized by a criminal group. They are not investigated as crimes executed by a criminal group. One episode is being investigated. They investigate the murder of Diakovsky, Popravka, Rybak. I believe because that was has become quite famous. But there are plenty of evidence. The criminals were leaving many traces. Girkin, who's the reconstructor, and if this investigation is started normally, if this is considered to be activity of one criminal group, then something could have been filed to the court. A month ago, I, as a representative of victims, submitted the application about what is not being investigated and the request to submit all these cases to the investigatory department of the Ministry of Interior, because there's an investigatory group which is investigating such events. What are the actions are to be made? The creation of one investigation group that would include the representatives of investigatory groups, local investigatory groups, in Slovyansk and Konstantinovka. They need to have several investigators, because there is now only one investigator who investigates all these crimes. It is obvious. Well, I do not know about all the crimes that were registered, that were committed by this group. I know just about small number, and no analytical work was carried out to unite all these crimes and to investigate them all together, to unite all people, to have the same leadership that would decide on whether this should be combined into one investigation. This is not done. That is all in my request, and I did not receive any answer to the request. The only criminal case which is being investigated, the victims, the relatives of the murdered people are not recognized as victims. We appeal against that, but we fail. I see direct similarity with the failure of investigation of cases related to Euromaidan. There's no procedural leadership, there are no human resources. One investigator cannot investigate it. As I know, all the cases registered in Kiev related to ATO area. Not military crimes, but that is investigated by one investigator. And he has 140 cases. That means that the leadership of the Ministry of Interior and the General Prosecutor Office do not have any objective to really conduct investigations and to make the those who are guilty responsible. Slovyansk is a very simple example. In Slovyansk, these are the crimes which have the best perspective to be investigated, because there are so many witnesses and victims. That is liberated territory, and there are no obstacles for investigation. Other crimes, crimes committed against civil population during occupation, the situation is more difficult there. The territories which are under occupation, we do have some evidence, but it will be more difficult to investigate that. And I believe that is not just one simple example. The activities of Girkin, besides the fact that these are crimes against our citizens, I believe that investigation of his activity is a link which will help to prove the Russian aggression. Girkin, before he came to Slovyansk, he was doing similar things in Crimea. That is known, and if the state, if the law enforcement bodies, and that was known a year ago, if they started investigating these things and they could make responsible Girkin and people from his group, and that could have been used at the international level if that had to be proved. But now we do not see that. We do not see that the security service, which first of all had to be engaged into this investigation, they ignoring this investigation. On the statement submitted by the victims were, the copies of them were sent to the Security Service of Ukraine. The General Prosecutor's Office does not believe that they need somehow to interfere and unite, and that is the competence of the General Prosecutor. They don't believe that they have to unite these cases that refer to similar events, and they split the evidence base, and in the result we don't have any results of the investigation of this criminal group. But if we look at the investigation of the case of that I mentioned, we see that this is possible to do. If the instructions are given, they can work and they can find evidence, they can discover, but that is to be done not with one case, but with the whole activity of a criminal group. I am Pavlo Yurov. I am a theater director and an actor. I was seized in Slovyansk in April 2014, and in July I was liberated. I spent 2 weeks in the cell of security service in Slovyansk, and then for 2 months in the detention facility in Slovyansk. In September last year, I submitted I filed the application stating that all my possessions were taken from me and I was kept in the detention facility, and that application, this is just there. In May, Zakrevska submitted the application on the case of my kidnapping. we were at the investigation experiment in main Slovyansk, but I was there as a witness, not as a victim. But the investigator refused me and refused the lawyer to give me the status of a victim. I am a victim only in the case which is not investigated. And this way my rights of the victim are not observed. As to Slovyansk, in April, in the end of March, I received a letter from there with the request to write a letter that I have no problem, that everything is fine with my health, and I have no and that I do not complain that I was detained for 70 years. And I have no claims against that, and I did not answer that letter. I am concerned with this situation because when myself and my friend were kidnapped by the separatists in Slovyansk, nearby there were the militiamen passing by. We were seized, and 5 people from the Ministry of Interior of Ukraine saw that, and they did nothing. I can say that one of those guys was trying to call someone, he said not. And the separatists who were detaining us said that that is done because the mayor ordered it, and we are taken to the security service. I don't know whether these militiamen are still working or whether they were fired from their positions in Slovyansk. And I also would like to state, as Evhenia, that if this case is separated like that, then it is makes it impossible to take this case to the court and to really punish those people who were violating the rights of the human rights of people. And militia does not consider that. I agree with Evhenia. They do not look at it as the activity of one criminal group, because from the inside they can say that was these were people who on a daily basis they were working, they were receiving salaries, they were kidnapping new people, there was all the time the rotation of the hostages, they were liberating some, not liberating others. In the end of May they started tribunals, courts. I don't know whether there was Girkin or not there, but the commanders of separatists, so-called specialists were there, and they were issuing the sentences to these people who were detained. And in reality, I do not know whether this separation of these cases is done on purpose, or maybe that is what we inherited from the times of the Soviet Union, which was just safeguarding them this way. And I would like to encourage people to create something like a private detective agency so that our investigators have some competition. Thank you for attention.
Yeah, it should be allowed. I'm Pavlo Decan. I'm a lawyer, and I deal with the Euromaidan cases and litigations, and I can say that the situation with the crimes committed in Slovyansk, in Gorlivka, in Donetsk, in that part of Ukraine which was occupied by the Russian mercenaries. The situation is identical to which we experienced with Maidan cases last year, half a year. When we tried to convince the Ministry of Interior, the SBU, that the joint investigators group should be established, uniting investigators from all these law enforcement agencies. Of course, this was done not in full line with our intention, but nevertheless it is better than what existed in 2014. The situation described by Evhenia and Pavlo proves that we should investigate not just activities of so-called activities of Girkin and his group, but also we should investigate the attempt to damage territorial integrity of Ukraine, and we should investigate the inspirers, Bezlier, Aber, Hodakivsky. I believe that all these people are involved in commitment of crimes against humanity. Ukraine has now spread the Roman statute for the events of that period, but we have very small hope that these crimes will be formed in cases and filed to the International Criminal Court. Unfortunately, this will be done only for the leaders, while ordinary employees or servicemen, they won't be punished. They still work in the law enforcement, and this proves that this investigation is just an attempt to distance themselves from the crimes, because unfortunately we may suspect that the evidences were destroyed, and this improper way of investigation allows to slow down the procedure, to lose many evidences, and actually at the end, eventually, these cases probably will never be investigated in full scope. But nevertheless, the pressure made upon Yarema last year, General Prosecutor Yarema last year, has proved that we have to push the authorities. I'm Romantsova Oleksandra. I'm coordinator of the mobile monitoring groups of the Civil Liberties Center. Our mobile monitoring group, amounting to 8 members, visited Slovyansk 2 weeks after liberation. Our objective was to visit all the places where hostages were kept and to see how they were treated, that is, to investigate whether they were tortured. We visited 4 premises in Slovyansk, including the SBU premises. It was after demining operation. which means that the upper floor and the roof were blasted already at that time. They were destroyed because of the mining operation, and unfortunately the room where they recorded all the all of the operations, it was ruined. But nevertheless, we found traces of blood together with Evgenia in the ground floor and underground floor. But the Ministry of Emergency collected all the papers together with other garbage which was there after the fire. And unfortunately, all the traces of those crimes, all the evidences, all the papers, all possible fingerprints, they were collected as garbage and thrown out. Unfortunately, it was not conservated. They were simply destroyed. Our mobile group regularly visits the ATO zone controlled by Ukrainian military, and we observe that this happens everywhere. People intend to bring in order and repair the damaged buildings, premises, etc. And law enforcement agencies never explain that this could be used as evidence. What do we have now? That parts of this one big case, they are splitted among different investigation agencies, and the majority of evidences are intentionally or unintentionally destroyed. That's why Euromaidan South appeals to the law enforcement agencies that they should unite all the investigations about Girkin and his group's activities. Slovyansk, Kramatorsk, Kostiantynivka in Donetsk Oblast, and some other episodes. We request to unite all these episodes under one investigator group, and also we demand that at the later stage one group of prosecutors should deal with the same case. This will be the simplest way for investigations. Unfortunately, there was a big number of deaths, of casualties in result of all these events, which make this investigation very important. That's why we invite journalists to pay attention to this fact and how we can improve investigation of these episodes. Thank you very much for your briefing. Questions? Would you please mention where your appeal to the Ministry of Interior and other law enforcement is published? We have it on our website, Euromaidan source, on other Euromaidan organizations. Just enter to Google search engine the name of this appeal, and you will find it on different websites. Vitaly Shkolny, RTVI. Do you work with Ukrainian institutions only, or with some international institutions like European Court of Human Rights? As far as I know, we have to exhaust all national remedies to go to international court. Currently, we need to prepare cases at sufficient level in order to file them later to all sorts of courts. So we have to document all the evidences. This is one part of our work. Another part of our work is to register all the cases of violations of human rights. Partially, this the cases were filed to European Court of Human Rights in line with Rule 39 immediately upon kidnapping of people. Rule 39 is a quick response procedure when the European courts immediately upon receipt of the notice about kidnapping sends special information request and demand to liberate the hostage to the country. So part of hostages were liberated. Then we filed the following violations: Article 3, illegal detention; Article 5, tortures; Article, unfortunately, 4, when the right to life was violated, when people were killed simply. In order to submit the file to European Court, you need to exhaust all the national remedies. But in case the investigation is absent, is not in place, then international courts take it as the absence of national remedies, like Pavlo. Pavlo is the object of was the object of investigation, in result of which he had received the denial to open the case. This will be taken by the International Court as full exhaustion of national remedies. I personally have submitted up to 24 of such cases to the European Court. We cooperate with the United Nations, with the UNDPL, with the Ukrainian Helsinki group, with the Poles, Ukrainian international human rights organizations. They are very keen to document all these cases of human rights violations and to find remedies. We have to control we have to find evidences to these crimes committed by the Russian Federation. Since both countries are involved, we believe that in future we will have just the Russian Federation who will need to pay a huge penalties for what they have done. This category of crimes could be categorized as terrorist acts. because the objective of all that activity was to terrify population in order to prevent any counteraction and oppression. Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Thank you very much.
Колеги, наш наступний.
Our next briefing will be at 12:30.